Welcome back to Femme and Furious, where we are still on an elongated vacation to Barry's Bay. And today is no different. We're diving into the lake talking about how every year after the show on Prime, that is after the source material, every summer after, is trading nostalgia for emotional warfare. And I am victim number one. As Percy begins to spiral in the show through her grief and her guilt, and the crushing pressure to be perfect, all of the women around her become mirrors, rivals, mentors, and occasionally all three at once. Also, what in the Wattpad side plot is happening with Delilah? All this and more right after this. Welcome back to Femme and Furious. I am your host, Julia Rose Portella, and a little housekeeping before we actually dip our toes in the lake and dive into everything from episodes 1 and 2 of every year after. Let's just talk a little bit about the schedule, okay? I'm going away at the end of June, and we will already be in House of the Dragon territory at that point. So I'm trying to figure out how to navigate the schedule, and I will let you know as soon as I know. I'm going to tell you what's happening right now. We're doing episodes 1 and 2 today on Friday. Hello. On Tuesday, we're doing episodes 3 and 4. Next Friday, I've got a special episode for Juneteenth. It will be a mashup episode with the podcast Consider This for Comfort by Atang. We are doing a Black Baddie comfort draft. So you'll hear that episode next Friday. And then we're marching into House of the Dragon territory. And I'm not really sure where I'm going to put the rest of every summer after, but we will obviously be finishing the show. So just stay up to date on the Patreon. So that's at least giving you next week's schedule on the show. Go over to the Patreon to get the rest of the details because I'll be figuring it out and posting it over there. The other thing I would like to let you know is that we have Common Threads Book Club. The theme is Pride. That is June 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link to register is in the show notes. Please come. Please be part of the book club. I would love to have you there. Okay, let us dive into our Slay by Slay. We're covering episodes 1 and 2. If you have already binged all episodes and you're like, why does it sound like she hasn't moved forward? It's because I am literally recording this after I just watched episodes 1 and 2. So this is somewhat of my initial reactions, more than maybe a typical Slay by Slay, but it's not really a quickie either. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. So we'll see how today goes. But these are sort of like my initial thoughts of these first 2 episodes. There are a lot of similarities and there are also a lot of seemingly really big differences. And I'm curious where the show is going to go with them, but I don't want to taint my experience by going all the way through and then losing some of the juicy bits of like those initial thoughts as they're percolating when we're in sort of a space like this. So if you've watched all the way through, good for you. I have not yet. I will be going right back to my TV after I record this episode and I will be continuing on, but this is sort of my initial thoughts. So let's start with episode 1. Episode 1 is titled Every Summer After. It is directed by Gillian Robespierre, and it is written by Amy B. Harris and Lila Gerstein. So first of all, I adored more than anything that they opened the show up with For Those Who Know Me / For Those Who Don't. This is acknowledging the book readers directly and also acknowledging fans of the show that are just going to find this on their Amazon Prime homepage and click and watch and never know that this was based off of a book or maybe discover that later on. So I love that Percy sort of introduces herself as like, hey, for those of you who know me because you've read the books and we've hung out before, and for those of you who don't. So if you're joining this conversation, by the way, and you've not read the books, but you decide to read the books, tagged in the show notes will be a playlist that has the 2 episodes that I did covering the books, sort of the first half and then the second half of the books. And now we're deep diving into the show. So if you're also just here because you found the show and you just want to geek out about it with somebody, hi, hello, welcome. We are multifaceted on this podcast. We also talked about the book. So you can go back and read it if you want. If you don't, cool, hang out. We have lots to talk about, especially our girl Percy. This girl's literally fighting against the closet. I thought the metaphor was so on the nose. I couldn't get over it. I thought it was so funny, though, that she just keeps trying to push this closet closed, right? A place where we literally bury our skeletons, like the secrets that hide in our closet. And she keeps trying to push it closed and it keeps coming back open. It's like she's fighting against her past. She's fighting against the skeletons in her closet and they're ready to push the door open. Like Pirates of the Caribbean style, they've got some gold medallions flipping through their fingers. And they're pushing back. They're like, sorry, just because we're a skeleton doesn't mean that we are actually dead. Not to go all Pirates of the Caribbean on you. Sorry. But she's literally fighting against her closet. She's fighting against the demons and the skeletons in her closet. So the show seems to be keeping the same type of format that we have in the book, which is cutting between the past and the present. So as we get this monologue that is Percy's speech to Chantal and to Drew at their engagement party, we literally have a scene of Percy swimming across the lake. And it was already like 3 minutes in, and I was tearing up. I love that we have her in her red bathing suit. I love that he hands her a blue Gatorade. It's these details that come directly from the book that don't get traded out just because it's a TV show and something might look better, that I absolutely love. That felt so pivotal that they just kept these details in. Those are the things that matter to book fans, the authenticity and the integrity of the source material. But then we have our first major change, right? So Percy's job in the present is that she writes obits instead of being an editor for a design magazine. This is in alignment with horror and like a part of her that is a writer and that likes to write stuff that is grim and dark. Though obits tend to be beautiful and lovely, so but they're about dead people. So there is something kind of in the genre, right? It's on brand for Percy as like a horror fan, but it's not necessarily great for this like on the nose metaphor of a story about a girl who literally has to edit herself to be liked or feels that she needs to edit herself to be liked. And that's the thing that the book does really, really well. So we will see. I'm only 2 episodes in. It seems like Percy is still struggling a lot with those perfectionist details about herself, but they seem to be coming out in different ways. So in the present, at Chantal's engagement party, Percy decides to go home with Drew's half-brother, Jake, who Percy has mentioned that she has casually slept with before. She tells Chantal, I'm not looking for a good man, just a good time. Yikes, yikes, yikes. We don't really like this for our girl Percy, but Chantal tells her that she can have both. And while I support women's rights and wrongs on this podcast, I was like snapping my fingers for Chantal saying that. Like, you don't have to choose Percy. You can have both. But as we will learn through just these first 2 episodes, Percy does not feel that she deserves it. And that is really in alignment with the Percy that we know from the books. We have some other changes timeline wise. So it's only been 10 years since she's been back to Barry's Bay instead of 12 years like it was in the book. And instead of Charlie being 2 years older, he's 3 years older, which does actually make a big difference to me. So I don't know. We shall see how all of that plays out. But yeah, it's only been 10 years, not 12 years since our characters have last been together and seen each other. So the closet symbolism comes back around now. We have her on the phone with Charlie. She begins to have a panic attack. She gets up to try to shut the closet. The closet keeps opening up. And then we hear Jake in the background being like, should I call Chantal? Things start to fade out. The sound starts to fade out. And we hear the sound of the heartbeat getting louder and louder in the background. Chantal then mentions that she hasn't had a panic attack in about 5 years. So she's worked through a lot of, I guess, the initial pieces of this. But now that all of these skeletons are coming back out of the closet, she's got a lot to contend with. She literally says to Chantal, it's not that I don't care. I don't deserve any better. So she's sitting with a lot of internalized shame already. From the very beginning of the show, we are seeing that Percy is somebody who carries so much emotional grief that she is doing a lot of emotional labor for a lot of these people, especially because the place that we are experiencing Sam and Charlie at in their adult lives still seems very immature. They don't seem to have many healthy coping mechanisms 2 episodes in. They don't seem to have a better relationship. It still seems very contrived. And even though Percy interacts with multiple people from her past in this first episode, she seems to be the only one that is suffering and struggling with everything that has happened in the past. And if you have not read the books, I will not spoil anything. But for those who have and want just like a little bit of my opinion, it seems like the big twist of the story is something that they are changing based off of some interactions that she's had with people. So I'm just going to leave it like cryptic in case that you did not read the book, and I don't want to give the twist away in case it doesn't go in that direction. But in my opinion, it just seems like the twist, the thing that she is carrying shame about, doesn't seem to be correlated to what it is in the book. I wouldn't be disappointed with that, but it seems like they're going in just a different direction. That's my gut reaction. Again, if you've binged this whole thing and you read the book and you're like, silly, silly Julia, silly, silly me then. But it's just my gut reaction. Percy does seem like she is somebody that is carrying a lot of the emotional weight, though. And that is, a woman being put into the position of carrying the emotional labor is nothing new. It's just that it seems to be really weighing on her. I mean, she's a tiny little girl. And this just seems to be like adding so much weight to her shoulders. So I love that Chantal is going to go with her. I love that Drew encourages Chantal to go with her and that Percy seems excited to have her there. This isn't like Percy going at it alone. This is another big change from the book where Percy does not feel like she can let people in, doesn't feel like she can have these deep, intimate relationships with people. And it takes the entirety of the book of shutting Chantal out for Chantal to come back to Percy and be like, I see you. I know who you are. Can you just cut the shit and let me in already? So the fact that it's actually almost a little alternative where Chantal is this workaholic and maybe a little bit cold and shutting people out, and Percy is the one who like is intentionally pulling her in to have that support system. I really just appreciate the depth to their relationship that they're adding, and that Chantal is going to be a character that is with us through the duration of these 8 episodes, because that feels critical. Her presence feels so important that in this world of Barry's Bay, where clearly every single person that Percy has interacted with is intentionally or unintentionally making her feel like a piece of shit, that she has an ally who's in her corner and who is going to support her and who isn't going to hold her in shame or in guilt or in regret. Like, she's not holding her in contempt to all of these things in her past that she did when she was 18. She is treating her like an adult woman, and she is giving her some solidarity and some friendship in a place where not only is Persephone dealing with like the ghosts of her summers past, not only is she confronting these difficult feelings of grief about her relationship with Sue, but by the end of episode 1, she's also grieving the loss of her relationship with Sam, the friendship of it, the fact that he is in a relationship with another woman, and trying to navigate all of those things alone is what is so heartbreaking about Percy in the book. But the fact that she has Chantal here as a friend just feels so lovely to me. We love female friendship. We love what it represents. We love when we see it done well. And the fact that even though Chantal has a lot of stuff to do, that she does put things down to go and be with Percy tells you the level of friendship that they have for each other. So then we have this shot of her packing, and the shot is coming from inside of the closet. We see her go into the closet and take out a dress for the funeral. She tries to shut the closet. It doesn't shut. She tries to shut again. It doesn't shut. And then she literally goes and gets tape to shut it closed so that all of these skeletons in her closet who are looking back at her while she's packing to go to Barry's Bay, who are like, girly pop, you are going to have to confront all of the things that you've done, whatever those things may be. The metaphor is loud and clear with the closet. I just want to let them know. I got it from the first shot of her trying and failing to shut the door 500 times, but the fact that it happens like 3 times in the first like 10 to 15 minutes of the show, I just want to let the writers know I got it. We got it right away. Thank you for giving it to us. So then we cut back to summer of 2011. We see the Welcome to Barry's Bay sign. It says, Lake Life Awaits. And that sign looks a bit like the cover of the book. It's got the scripty font. It's got the orange coloring against like the blue lake in the sky, which I loved. I felt like that was there for us little book readers. And again, just want to let the writers and the directors and the showrunners and everybody know, gobble, gobble, gobble. I ate it up. Loved it. Couldn't get enough of it. We've got young Percy and her parents showing up to the lake, and Percy's mom's like, hey, maybe we can go into town and you can meet some friends that are girls your age. And she turns around and she's like, I don't need girls my age. I'm just going to go down to the lake. Love this. She's obviously traumatized from whatever has happened with Delilah at school. In the show, we haven't gotten that version We haven't really gotten what has happened between her and Delilah yet, but we know from the book that there is some history there, some bad history, some good history, and then some bad history again. So we'll see how the show sort of takes us through this journey, because Delilah is being inserted into Barry's Bay in a way that actually makes me viscerally uncomfortable. I don't know that I love this, but I'm trying not to be judgmental, because it's not that I don't like Delilah. I love Delilah in the book. I think she's an interesting character and a nuanced character. And I think if this book does anything well, it is that it makes women and female characters diverse and not two dimensional. So I don't want to judge how she's showing up in the TV show, because I don't really know enough about her yet. I've only seen 2 episodes out of 8 episodes. But I will just say, based off of the fact that I am a lover of the book, I'm having a hard time understanding this like mega injection of Delilah into the story. It feels very messy to me, but who's to say messy isn't fun? Messy can be fun. So Percy in the present is holding on to a lot of guilt. I think guilt is a conversation that we're going to have probably episode after episode until we really get the climax of what has happened and the repercussions of it. I'm kind of along for the journey right now, because in the book, we have the same kind of vibe where we know that something has happened, but we don't know what the thing is until like the last quarter of the book. I still feel like this is going to be different than how it played out in the book. So I'm along for the journey right now. I have certain expectations about what I think is going to happen, but there's a lot of things that are already different. So this conversation around guilt is also going to be interesting for me, because I don't really know what she feels guilty about at this point. We're getting little slivers and pieces of it. It's like one almond being chopped into many little tiny like almond slivers. So one of those little slivers of guilt is that she disappeared on Sue, a woman who clearly, just like in the book, has had a lot of impact on Percy. And especially in the show, we're already getting so many more moments and instances of influence that Sue has had on Percy. And that's just in the first 2 episodes. I mean, like, who can forget the woman who took you to your first bikini wax? Who could forget her? So I really think that this idea of guilt, of shame, of regret is going to be important. And we're dealing with it first and foremost with this idea that Percy has in some way abandoned Sue. So Percy and Chantal are in the car. They are talking about coming back to Barry's Bay. They are talking about all of the things that are happening here. And Percy says, I want it to be perfect. I want me to be perfect. She goes on to say that, like, makeup is my armor. And Chantal's like, I get it. A blazer is, my shield, whatever she says. And then she says something along the lines of, like, it prepares you to, like, negotiate with the enemy or something like that, like some sort of Chantal ism. And Percy is looking in the rear view mirror and she goes, I don't want Sam to be my enemy, but I acknowledge that he may see me that way. And then as she says that, he may see me that way, she pushes the rear view mirror away from herself. Again, the closet's the mirror, the beauty of a metaphor. Literally, a rear view mirror is something that you use to look at something behind you. She's just said that the second that she comes back to Barry's Bay, she is 18 all over again. And now she's looking in the rearview mirror, unable to face her 18-year-old self and whatever she did. So she pushes the mirror away and she focuses on trying to perfect who she can be in this moment. It is after this conversation that Chantal and Percy separate for a little bit. Percy's like, I'm going to go cool off down by the lake, get my thoughts in order. And Chantal's like, I'm going to go work. See you later, BB. And it is here that we start to get like the ghosts of summer past. So we have this little meditation scene with Sue and with Percy, where we can tell that Percy has been struggling with her anxiety her whole life. But instead of shaming her or telling her that this is a tool that is going to help her or anything like that, Sue just says, like, that's what makes you you. Like, somebody who is a deep thinker, somebody who likes to process things, somebody who is analyzing things, like, that's who you are, my love. And so don't ever change that about yourself. But if you want to soothe your mind and get a little reprieve, like I need to get a little reprieve because guess what? I'm raising 2 teenage boys by myself and that's fucking hard. Then why don't we put our fingers together in a nice Om position and do some meditating? And Percy loosens up. There is no shame about anything that happens with Sue. She is just so kind and loving and nurturing to a young woman like Persephone, who's going through this coming of age journey over the course of the years that we're going to see. So Percy then continues on her journey. So this moment that she has in this phantom experience where she starts to see her and Sue, it starts to spike up her anxiety. She goes down to the water and she sees Sam talking on the phone and she can't face it yet. She turns around, she starts to run away, and then it switches POVs. So we're looking from Sam's perspective to the trail where we see her running away, and you can tell that he's having a phantom moment of the phantom of the girl next door, right? So then it cuts back to 2011, summer of 2011. We have details that I love. The Creature of the Black Lagoon poster. Perfect. We needed it there. I love that they're talking about like the mythology of her name, and Sam is like, that's spooky. Because I had never considered that like the goddess of the underworld is something that is spooky and connected to the horror pieces of Persephone and Percy, like in her name. We then get the first mention of Delilah and that she's had some problems with the girls in school. And then she shows Sam a picture. He says, she looks mean. He's like, wasn't Delilah the name of that girl that's the villain in the Bible? She cuts the guy's hair. And Percy is like, you mean Samson? So let's take a little detour into Bible Corner. Okay. So Delilah and Samson are basically the Bible's OG toxic situationship. Samson is a divinely chosen warrior with superhuman strength. He doesn't just have arms that are decorative. Baby, those things work and they are functional. And he is unstoppable. That's his thing. That's what he's known for, except when it comes to making good romantic decisions. Then we have Delilah, okay? She is a woman who Samson falls hopelessly in love with, despite every possible red flag that is waving in his face. Now, unbeknownst to him, Samson's enemies offered Delilah a huge sum of money to figure out the source of his strength. Where does his superhuman strength come from, babe? She does what any determined woman in a biblical cautionary tale would do. She nags him. She continues to nag him, to guilt trip him. She's throwing out a lot of eyelashing and continues to be like, well, if you really loved me, you would tell me your secret. But Samson keeps giving her fake answers and Delilah keeps testing him. She knows something's not right. A woman's intuition is never wrong. I will say that on this podcast. It should be one of our slogans. Somehow, and by somehow, I mean he is a man. Samson never realizes what's happening. So after enough persistence, he finally tells her the truth, which is that his strength comes from a sacred vow symbolized by his uncut hair. So Delilah, being who she is, promptly has his hair cut while he sleeps and hands him over to his enemies, who capture and imprison him because now he doesn't have his superhuman strength anymore and he can't fight his way out of it. It is one of the most famous betrayals in religious literature and has made Delilah synonymous with the archetype of the femme fatale or the seductive woman whose beauty and whose charm bring down a powerful man, which is why it is so interesting that we have this acknowledgement of Delilah and Sam. This is never mentioned in the book. So to me, the fact that they're bringing it up here in this context between Percy and Sam seems like they are priming Delilah to be a threat, a temptress, some sort of woman who is going to be connected to the hero's downfall, whether that's Persephone's or Sam's. I'm not really sure. Okay, that's my interpretation of it. If you feel like you're getting something different about Delilah's vibes, send me an email, femmeandfuriouspod@gmail.com. All right, then we cut back to the present. The boys are arguing. In my opinion, as Charlie's number one stan and somebody who will live and die by my Lord and Savior, Charlie Florrick, this seems very un-Charlie-like to me, and I'm not really sure what they're trying to do. Again, I'm only 2 episodes in, but I'm not really loving Charlie. And I'm feeling really conflicted about that because I love Charlie so much and I would die for him, okay? It seems very un-Charlie-like to me that he would berate Sam for being the one who is there to take care of Sue and that he would be resentful that Sam had the option to take time off of his residency to be able to do that. It just seems like their resentment towards each other is real. There's something about it that feels very tangible to me and very honest about the way that people navigate grief and the way that people navigate somebody's end of life journey and how they have processed the end of life journey. I know this is true in my own family of people who cared for others who were passing away and their resentment of the people who weren't there every day or didn't have to see it every day. But it just seems very un-Charlie like to me that he would be resentful and shaming Sam over the fact that Sam is the one that was there. It just seems very un-Charlie like to me. But I don't know Charlie in the show that well, so we're getting acquainted. I also didn't really know what to make of the interaction between Charlie, Delilah, and Percy, and then like Chantal kind of enters into that. This whole interaction was viscerally uncomfortable for me to watch. And I wasn't really sure what to do about it. Although I did love Chantal as the comic relief between all of these people, where Charlie says, "Hey, I'm Charlie." And she goes, "Sam's brother." And he goes, "Oh, you've heard of me?" And she goes, "Mm-hmm." Like, so cold, like cuts to the bone, so honest about who she is and what you're getting with her, which I love. And then I love that after that interaction, Delilah's like, "I'm Delilah. You haven't heard of me?" And she's like, "Mm-mm." So I really thought that that interaction when Chantal kind of came in was really funny and brought in a lot of levity. And I love that Chantal, as this sort of like straight shooter, cold kind of person, is there as some comic relief for this very awkward situation that I have found myself watching and feeling uncomfortable by. I love that Chantal also asked Percy the hard-hitting questions, which is like, why are they acting like they're fucking? And Percy's like, they're not fucking. She's married. And Chantal is like, that's never stopped people from like having an affair or like sleeping with each other. I love Chantal. I love her character. I love her so much. This is like one of my favorite additions from the book is that we're getting more Chantal in the show. So when Delilah presses Charlie and she's like, "Why have you invited Percy here?" He says, "My mom asked me to." And I'm confused. I understand that Delilah lives here and that she clearly has been living here and that she is still integrated into this circle in a way that Percy has been exiled, whether that is a personal decision or a collective decision by this community and these people. But what I will say is, it doesn't really seem to me like Delilah is somebody who is capable of holding nuance because while it makes sense that Percy is here and that she would have things to close up or a deep connection to Sue, it seems like Delilah is trying to stake a claim on who has the right to be there for Sam and Charlie. And even though she's the one that's throwing this memorial and clearly still involved with all of these people in their lives, Percy points out, like, she wouldn't have ever known about this place or these people if it wasn't for me. And it doesn't really matter what her current relationship is with it. It doesn't deny the fact that for years, Percy and Sam had this intimate relationship that we're getting intercut. So we know that not only are they best friends, but they become lovers, that they have a romantic connection to each other. We see all of these interactions that she's had with Sue so far. So we know that it's not all that strange that Percy, this person who was super integrated into their childhood and who had this deep, intimate relationship with Sue, would be here. And the fact that Delilah is almost trying to cut her out of some of this feels really icky to me, especially since by episode 2, we understand that her and Charlie are having an affair. So the fact that Delilah then says, like, "Why did you invite her? Like, this is a mistake." And he says, "I'm already regretting this decision." I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? Charlie in the book is a really flawed character. All of our characters are super flawed. That's what makes them so interesting. And it's what makes the story so dynamic and compelling. But the fact that Charlie in the show doesn't seem as confident, doesn't seem as interested in being a good brother to Sam, which is something that is so clearly on his mind in the present in the book, that he wants Sam to just go for the things that he wants and gets frustrated with him for making stupid, dumb choices that he makes when he is a teenager, that he continues to make them as an adult. And Charlie is the one who gets viscerally angry with Sam over those things. So the fact that they're having these like real sibling squabble, but that there's no resemblance of Charlie, somebody who loves his brother and wants to be a good brother, and cares that Sam is making decisions that don't align with what Charlie knows is actually best for Sam, or what their mom, what Sue wanted for Sam, that Sue was the one who wanted Percy to be here and that requested that. It feels a little bit off to me. I'm really confused about Charlie's character, and I'm hoping that the show will then develop their relationship so that they can stop this like bullshit squabbling, and that it comes out that maybe some of these fights are actually about something deeper. I'm not saying that grief over losing a parent isn't a good enough reason to have squabbles. People would squabble in general if that is why they're doing it. But these fights seem like Sam and Charlie agree on nothing. It seems like their relationship is so frayed and so taut that every little thing that is a pressure point becomes like a weight to the ankle in the water. I'm really hoping that there's an evolution of what these fights actually mean, and that there's some tension underlying these fights that have nothing to do with what is actually going on here and a lot more to do with Percy or their past. We've got the Bay Breeze Motel in the present. Let me tell you, the fact that it is called Bay Breeze and that is a feminine drink, even though I don't think that that's what it's named for, I just felt a little giddy inside when I saw that. So Geordie runs the inn because of course he does. And instead of calling Sam, Geordie, who clearly recognizes Percy and clearly to both Percy and Chantal is like trying to cut her out of this, like being cold on purpose by giving them one room, by pretending not to remember her, all of this stuff. Tell me why then, as Sam's best friend, Geordie doesn't call Sam, but then calls Delilah. Why is Delilah the fucking center post of everybody in this world? I'm sorry. She's like gossip queen number one. Why are we calling Delilah? If Geordie is Sam's best friend, don't you think that Geordie should pick up the phone and call Sam? But I digress. So she goes on a run with Chantal. She sees Sam coming. Chantal clocks that Percy has dipped out, so she's like, okay, that's Sam. Hi, hello. Percy, trying to get as far away from Sam as possible in that moment, runs down the path, sees her old house up for demolition, and then she decides to jump in the lake, I guess, to cool off. But as soon as she jumps in the lake, she starts having these phantom memories of her, Charlie, and Sam in the water together. She has a panic attack. She goes under. Charlie saves her. She has this conversation with Charlie where she's like, I feel an immense amount of guilt about everything that happened in the past. That conversation right there, I was kind of like, that's what's making me think that there's something very different than what happened in the book. But again, if you are a book girly and you know what happened and you want to talk about it, let me know, because that conversation between Charlie and Percy about like, does Sam hate me? That conversation led me to believe that they are taking a different approach to the material. With that said, Geordie makes up for this major transgression of not calling Sam by then telling him in person that Percy is here. I was really starting to get frustrated that all of these people were not telling Sam, and that Percy was able to avoid Sam for so long, because in the book, they interact pretty quickly from the time that she gets to town. It's like she gets to town that night, and that night she's talking to Sam. So the fact that she's already been here for some time and hasn't bumped into him yet, like it takes her the whole day and all of these people see him and they all have cell phones and nobody's called him or told him about it, feels a little fucking weird to me. It makes sense that Charlie wouldn't tell him, because Sue is the one that asks Charlie to get Percy to come because she knows that Sam is too stubborn and won't do it. But I was starting to get really frustrated that everybody else, Delilah, who is clearly still talking to Sam, Geordie, who's still friends with Sam, like none of these people are telling Sam that Percy is here. So Geordie does finally tell him, and Sam gets into a literal physical fight with Charlie, who's on the dock. He pushes him, Charlie pushes him back, and they end up in the water and they start to have this like water fight. Goes so long to Charlie's cell phone after that, I suppose. So again, this like big tension point between the brothers, and we don't really know why yet. So it cuts back to the past. We have 2011, where Sam tells Percy that his dad has passed away, and then Percy gives Sam their friendship bracelets, and that is like the real solidification of their friendship that summer. And then it kind of cuts back to the present, where Percy finally gathers the courage. She goes to the tavern, and we get the line, "You came home," which I'm not gonna lie, hits a bit different when he already knew that she was in town. Just hits a little bit different. So the tavern is getting sold to Delilah, we find out. Sam does not know this. Sam is in the dark. This is another point of contention that is happening between the brothers. Charlie has already cut a deal with Delilah and is selling it to her. Again, feels like a very un-Charlie-like thing to do. But que sera, whatever will be. That's what's happening on the show. So he is making all of these changes that just feel so un-Charlie like to me. And Delilah is now more integrated into this community. Not only does she have a house there and she lives there, but she is now going to be the one that is taking over the tavern. And the fact that once again Sam is not ready to sell and Charlie is the one that is pushing this and has actually made a deal against Sam's wishes. Not great, bro. Not a good look. Then Taylor comes in at the end. Percy and Sam are having a little bit of a moment. And then Taylor comes and interrupts it. And he says, Percy, this is my girlfriend, Taylor. And the episode sort of cuts out with this like ringing in Percy's ears, panic attack, etc., like coming on. She doesn't go into a full-blown panic attack, but she's clearly panicking, the fact that we get that like high-pitched ringing in the ears. So one of the things that I want to talk about in this episode is that we have these like feminine archetypes. We have Percy as the girl next door. Chantal is the ambitious career girl boss, workaholic. Delilah is the socialite, the beauty queen, maybe even the mean girl. Seems like there's a little bit of mean girl in there. Sue is the matriarch. And then we have Taylor, who is this nurturing, loving girlfriend. I don't know what her archetype would be, but she is, of course, like perfect in every way. And even though I feel that they are really portraying like specific archetypes, it does also show that this experience of femininity doesn't have one shade, that they can all be different shades and correct in their versions of femininity and womanhood. All right, let's take a look at episode 2, Young Blood, directed by Jeff W. Bird and written by Layla Gerstein and Jeff Rottenberg and Eliza Zaritsky. So Percy starts panicking. She leaves the motel and she's like, I just need a fucking drink. So she goes to the tavern for a drink. She breaks in. And of course, Sam is there too. And they're having a drink together. She offers to write the obituary. And Sam is like, Taylor's already working on it. That stings. That really hurts. It really is quite painful that came out of his mouth. IMHO. You know, Sam in the book is so much more receptive to Percy's place in everything that is happening in Barry's Bay at the present. And while Sam does seem very warm to Percy as she has shown up in this moment, throwing up this bit about Taylor being the one who is going to work on the obituary feels a little bit like his version of armor. You know, I don't necessarily think that he's hiding behind his relationship with Taylor, but I think the fact that he learns that Percy is someone who writes obituaries and she would want to be engaged in doing this thing. Taylor has a million other things that she's clearly doing for the Florex at this moment in time. So he could have delegated this to her, and yet like it feels almost like a snipe that he didn't. Or chooses not to. Sam in the show seems much less receptive to Percy being here and wanting to be engaged and helping in any way that she can. I also love Jordy and Chantal, who are clearly going to be a thing. I love them. They are maybe my favorite part of the show so far. I love their banter. I love the fact that they are this like grumpy sunshine, like opposites attract, black cat, golden retriever type of energy that we have going on between the two of them. They are really giving Sam and Percy a run for their fucking money right now because I really love them as a couple and I hope that they get together. So let's go to Delilah and Percy in the scene where Percy asks what she can help with the memorial, and Delilah just completely cuts her out of it. And again, I don't really understand why. So Percy says, Sue was like a second mother to me. And then Delilah takes a knife out of her back pocket, stabs it in, Percy's heart by saying, you have a funny way of showing it, and then twists the knife when she says, I'm just happy to see Sam happy in his relationship. I don't, again, really understand what this Delilah plotline is. It's almost like we have Taylor and Delilah as these feminine forces against Percy. And there is definitely this concept or, thread that the show is pulling at about women being each other's mirrors. So we sort of have Delilah functioning right now as a foil to Percy, who is embodying traits Percy fears or rejects. We have Chantal, who is acting as a voice that challenges Percy's self-destructive or anxious thoughts and beliefs. We have Sue, who is reflecting back a version of Percy that deserves care and nurturance and protection. And all of these female characters, are becoming mechanisms through which Percy is negotiating her own identity, especially now that she's back in Barry's Bay. So this feels like a significant conversation between the two of them and a tension that exists between the two of them that I'm not really sure why it's there. But it's not even just that, like, Delilah is being skeptical of Percy's appearance. She's being deliberately cruel to her, both in the mentioning of Sam's girlfriend and in the fact that she's intentionally cutting her out of the memorial, knowing what her relationship with Sue was and knowing what her relationship with Sam and Charlie was growing up. This is intentionally cruel. And I felt really heartbroken for Percy as she was experiencing this. Like, no matter what she has done in her past, nobody deserves to be treated like this, especially when you know that they are grieving. And I'm not saying that Delilah is not grieving too, but it's not like Delilah is unaware of this relationship that Percy has had with Sue. It's not like she's Taylor and she's gatekeeping because she doesn't know who Percy is and Percy is an outsider. Delilah was once the outsider that Percy brought in. So Delilah is intimately aware of the relationships that were happening between Sam and Charlie and Sue and all of these people, that these were like her second family. So this is cruel, and it felt cruel. Again, brothers arguing over literally everything. They're arguing over the fact that Sam doesn't want to sell the tavern. Charlie is like, there's termites. We've got to focus on the porch. We've got to get this power wash. Like, Charlie's trying to take care of practical details, and Sam is also trying to take care of practical details, but Sam's like looking through paperwork and trying to get things organized with papers. And Charlie is like, hey, we have other things to do. And it would be nice if they could just divide and conquer. If Charlie could just say, this is something that I care about and I'm going to need some help. So I'm going to invite my own friends, since I grew up here and I also have friends who surely know that I'm grieving and I need help, that they'll come and help me with the practical things if you want to continue to go through the paperwork. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just like they're literally arguing over everything. And every single note that I have in my notes, my little bullet points, is like so un-Charlie like. So sorry, because I probably said it like 10 times already and I still feel that that's true. So there's a leak in the freezer. So now the freezer's not working and they're going to have to store all of this food. And so Delilah, again, in this cruel manner, is finally letting Percy help, but by getting ice. And so she's got these 2 bags of ice. She's like walking into town so that she can drop them off. She's only one person with 2 hands. Delilah's like, that's all you got? Well, yeah, for right now. We also see then that Delilah and Charlie are hooking up. Cool, cool, cool. Not sure how I feel about it, so I'm just going to leave it until I have some more definitive thoughts, other than I think this is a really bad idea, and I'm not sure why they're taking Charlie's character, who is a wildly complex character in the books, and making him into somebody that already seems very unlikable, but okay. So we kind of cut back to Geordi and Chantal, who I love. Okay, I love that Chantal is like, I have opinions about you sleeping on the job, and then she is somebody who's sleeping on the job, and Geordi's like, you want to know what? Seems like maybe you need some ice cream. So they go out. We discover that she cancels her wedding Zoom in order to be able to have this little day date with Geordi here. He's like, whose wedding? She's like, my own wedding. And he's like, I didn't know you were engaged. She says the most feminist thing that you could say in a situation like this, despite the fact that she's clearly not going to get married to Drew. And that is her saying, yeah, it's just not the most interesting thing about me. She then goes on to list all of these accomplishments that are things that she considers more interesting about herself, and they are all work related. The first is that she is the youngest person who is going to make partner at her firm. The second is that she billed 20,000 hours last year. It's a lot of work hours. To give you some context about how big that number actually is, if most people, let's just say, worked a 40-hour work week, that's 2,080 hours a year. So that number seems like physically impossible, right? But anyway, moving on from that, she also negotiated Siz's deal with Coach before she brushed her teeth that morning. So she clearly has a lot of pride in her career ambition and wants people to acknowledge her for it. And for that, I don't blame her and I love her. I think Chantal is one of the coolest characters that we've got in the show. I also love that Geordi is like amateur detective number 1. Knows just by talking to Delilah, he's like, Is that why you're always at the tavern? Are you hooking up with Charlie? Like, he's pressing on all of these things. And when Delilah's like, it's none of your business, and like, what would you know? He's like, well, clearly things with you and Wit aren't good right now. And she's like, yeah, things aren't good with me and Wit. So we know that there's something going on in Delilah's marriage that is falling apart at the seams. She is seeking comfort in Charlie. And Jordy even says, like, I don't really know what's going on, but I can tell you that the answer isn't Charlie Florek. Okay, these people all clearly have a deep history, and I am excited for us to put on our Deerstalker hat, get out our magnifying glasses, and Sherlock Holmes our way through it, because it seems a little bit more complex than how it was in the books. And for that, I'm not mad. Again, messy doesn't mean bad. It just means a little bit messier. And I like that. We like a little bit of slop, okay? It makes it fun. Now, Delilah sends Percy on another errand to go back to the Florek house and get some photos for the memorial. Of course, there, Percy runs into Taylor, the nicest person on planet Earth, with, of course, the most likable profession, because Taylor is a pediatrician. So instead of her being a cold, hard-edged lawyer who doesn't look like she belongs in Barry's Bay like she does in the book, she's a pediatrician. Like, is there a more fucking likable thing that we could do for her? Like, of course, she is the most likable person with the most, like, honorable profession that you could possibly have. So she brings up to Percy all of these boxes. She's talking about Sue and Sam in a way that is alternative to how Percy remembers Sue and knows her relationship with Sam. So she goes as far as to say, hey, there's all of these boxes of horror movies, which she says is very un-Sam-like. And she mentions that he keeps switching it to save, even though she keeps putting a Goodwill, like, donation sticker on it. She's like ready to get them out of the house and get the stuff all cleaned up. And he keeps doing it. And she's like, this is a guy who would rather have a root canal than watch a movie on TV, like any movie. And he wants to save these movies. So there's this really interesting thread of like the jealousy and the nostalgia and the mourning of Percy as she looks at Taylor as somebody who has pieces of Sam and information about Sam that she doesn't have access to anymore, that she's not privy to anymore. And yet, again, unbeknownst to Taylor, that this is a piece of Sam that Percy knows, that she knows intimately. She knows exactly what this box of DVDs is. She knows exactly who brought it there. She knows exactly why Sam doesn't want to get rid of it. And for that reason, even though Taylor is not necessarily jealous of Percy, Percy is aware of a version of Sam that Taylor will never know and could never access. So Percy then goes up to Sam's room to go find some more photos. She ends up taking a few photo albums off of the shelf and she finds a ring. I'm going to talk about something from the book. If you've not read the book, just skip ahead like 1 or 2 times. So the question is this her old ring that Percy uses to propose to her, or is this a ring for Taylor? Either way, it sends Percy spiraling. She calls her mom, who is now gay. We see that she's with a woman and the woman is like, babe, calls her babe. Now, I don't know. I call everybody under the sun babe. So I guess that doesn't mean that this is a romantic relationship. But from the way that they were sitting on the couch to the way that she said babe and the way that they were looking at each other, I just got the feeling that Percy's mom is going to leave her dad for a woman. And I'm here for it. And I hope that we get a full storyline on it. I hope that it's not something that just happens in the periphery. I hope that this is a storyline that unfolds on screen, because I'm really down for this. Happy Pride Month, everybody. So she calls her mom crying, and her mom says something interesting, which is that place and those boys are toxic. Okay, well, what do you mean by that? Now, again, if you're listening to this and you've binged all of the episodes, sorry, I'm not there yet. I've only watched the first 2 episodes, but she said that and I had to pause my TV because I was like, that place and those boys are toxic? What happened? I just feel like the big thing that I can't get over is that clearly what happened in the book is not what's going to happen in the TV show, or at least the events that lead up to that big twist are not going to be the same. And the fact that her mom would say something like that place and those boys are toxic, why? Why? I need to know why. I need to know what happened. I need to know how it happened. I need to go to the next episode. So I need to finish recording this so that we can get on with the storytelling. Her mom then hangs up with Percy and turns to Babe and says, after everything they put her through, why would she go back there again? What does she mean by that? Okay. Anyway, at the end of the present moment in this episode, in episode 2, Young Blood, is Sam showing up at the motel and asking if he can come in. So now let's jump back to summer 2012. We get the introduction to 3 updates, which is something that comes directly from the book, that after any period of time that Sam and Percy spend apart, that they give each other 3 major updates about what is going on in their life, despite the fact that they email consistently when they are teenagers. Sam notices that Percy's not wearing her friendship bracelet, and she says, honestly, I took it off because I was not sure if you would be wearing yours and I didn't want to be embarrassed. And then she ends up pulling it out of her pocket and putting it on in the moment. Sam tells her he never takes it off, not even to wash it. So I love this. We also get the swearing on the friendship bracelet, which is something that happens consistently throughout the book. So we're seeing them tuck their hands into each other and sort of make their promises and give it a little tug, which I adore. Again, these details from the book into the TV show is critical for my viewing experience. And I love that these small details matter to the writers and the showrunners and the directors as they're moving through the story. We get the introduction to Young Blood, which in the book is a story that she ends up dedicating to Sam. But this is a first major story that she writes. She writes horror stories. And I love that it's almost like lifted right from the page where he's like, you're a freak. I want to see what's going on in that mind. But this is like really lovely connections here, although we don't get the dedication to Sam yet. So I'm wondering if that will come in future episodes. But yeah, she dedicates this first story to Sam. We then have in the past Delilah and Charlie, sort of from the time that they are kids. So Delilah walks past in her itsy bitsy teeny weeny yellow polka dot bikini. And Charlie's like, what's her friend's name? Sam says, oh, that's Delilah. Young Delilah tells Percy that she's underselling her goodies and that she should get a bikini. And then we have the game of truth or dare. Delilah asks Percy, do you have a boyfriend? Her and Sam immediately look at each other and she's like, no. She then asks Sam, do you have a girlfriend? And he's like, takes a long time to answer. I was kind of wondering if he was going to say yes, but then says no. And then Charlie comes over pretending like he's going to steal the kiss, which he does in the book. He steals the kiss. He kisses Percy. It's her first kiss. And we have like a young Percy puckering her lips. Like all I could think of was Sebastian when he's like, you've got to pucker up your lips like this. Like it's so forced. Like she's clearly never kissed anybody before. She's got her eyes closed and her lips like so far away from her face as she's like trying to lean into Charlie. And it's very clear that Charlie is just taunting Sam here. And it does get him riled up because Sam storms out and then is a little bit weird with Percy when she comes back later. So she comes back and she's like, hey, let's watch whatever scary movie she suggests. And he's like, no, thank you. We're watching Billy Madison. And Percy's kind of like, okay, all right. Like she's a little like, what the fuck is going on right now? And then she gets her period. She gets her period for the first time. She is trying to leave and go home. And Sue is there and comforts her through it and helps her through it and gives her pads and walks her through her own experience. She says, thank you for telling me, which I thought was so kind. She then shares her own story about getting her period, where she's like, I was on an apple orchard. I was like far away from home. I had white jeans on. I bled through them. And Percy's like, I just bled through my favorite underwear and my favorite shorts and also probably your couch. And Sue doesn't shame her at all. She's like, yeah, we had 2 boys. That couch is already probably pretty fucked up. Like it's fine. She like tries to be as compassionate and as kind and as empathetic and as encouraging as she can to a young girl. And I love this. I love how warm she is. I love the relationship that we see. So not only is she there to walk her through getting her first period for the first time, but she's also that girl's first bikini wax. And I just feel like Sue has been there for a lot of firsts for Percy's vagina. And I think that we should honor that she should not be cut out of the memorial because clearly Sue and her had a lot of things going on together in their feminine wild experiences. So before she leaves, Percy then asks Sam, are we good? Because she can feel some sort of tension between them. And it's important to note that Charlie is like, hey, Percy called me when you're a couple years older, but doesn't actually kiss her. And because they make him a little bit older in the show, I do feel like that is critical. But she asks, are we good? Because Sam has not been so great at articulating his feelings. clearly has a lot of them about whatever has just happened between Percy and Charlie or didn't happen between Percy and Charlie. And instead of confronting her about it and talking to her about it or explaining himself or diving into it, he clearly has his own shame about his feelings for Percy and doesn't know how to bring them up to her. So I really loved episodes 1 and 2. I'm excited to continue to dive in. I love that there are these moments of rejection of shame around the female body where Delilah is like, show your goodies, that Sue tells Sam to like shut the fuck up when he's like, I didn't know you could eat so many pierogies, which is a line that belongs to Charlie in the book, but she's like, no, you don't talk about women that way. I love that there is this rejection of shame around the female body so far, and I'm excited to continue to explore the story and go a little bit deeper. So for our feminist follow through, I want to circle back to something that I mentioned during the books, which is a newsletter called Grants for Creators. If you are a writer like Percy or you're creative in other ways, this newsletter, there is a free version, there's a paid version, is going to be incredible for you because it's going to offer you resources in order to get your projects funded so that you can do the thing that you love the most. This is run by a mentor of mine. Her name is Danielle. She's phenomenal. She does many, many things, but this is one of the things that she does. And I want to mention it here in this episode because it seems like we're going to go a lot deeper with other stuff later on. And so while there might be more feminist, quote unquote, things to talk about, maybe some marriage counseling for Delilah, maybe some breaking of workaholic addiction for Chantal, or like how to end your engagement so that you could be with a cute guy from Barry's Bay for Chantal, and clearly some anxiety management for my girl Persephone. While there seems to be some other really rich feminist things that we are going to talk about in the future of the show, I don't want to discredit the value of part of feminist follow through being that women are disproportionately outnumbered in the art system. How many times have we heard people complaining about how many men are on microphones just doing their Chad Brad thing, spewing nonsense about women into microphones and like traditional values into microphones? I don't know what the actual number is, but I can guarantee you if I looked it up, it would say that more men are published than women. In fact, when men publish something, it goes under literary fiction or horror or whatever. But when women publish something, it goes under women's lit, right? Like there are separate categories for women who write things. So I really think that it's important and it's valuable for women to have resources to fund their work. And so if you're a woman listening to the show, Grants for Creators gives you a whole click down menu for specifically for women creators, but it's also intersectional in other ways. So there's opportunities for BIPOC women, for queer women, for Indigenous women. Like she's got so many different subcategories that you can find that you might really be able to monopolize on. And she's got it broken down by different mediums. So maybe you're not a writer like Persephone. Maybe you are a podcaster like me, or maybe you are a visual artist. There are all different categories that are all available to you for Grants for Creators. It's an incredible newsletter. Go join it and get your projects funded. You deserve to be all the wonderful things that you should be in this life. And whether or not Persephone, loves writing obituaries, clearly she is talented beyond the obit and could be doing some more. And maybe we'll find herself doing some more later on in this series of television. So let's crack open the burn book where we will look at the superlatives for this episode. The Bold and Bothered Award, which is strictly for the femme and the furious. It is the quote or the moment that really relays the most feminine rage. And that goes to Persephone, who says, I'm a 28-year-old grown-ass woman. I have one of the only remaining jobs in journalism. I have a cute apartment. I have hot men to hook up with. And suddenly I'm back here and I'm 18 again. I got chills when I heard that line. I was like, oh boy, here we go. Down the rabbit hole, Alice. The Shiro Award. This award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring or the moment that is the most empowering. And it definitely goes to Sue helping Percy with her period. I loved that moment. I will be referring to this moment in many other podcasts in Femme and Furious future. The Femme Fatale Award for the most smash the patriarchy moment of the episode. And it goes to the look and the drinking of the coffee that Percy and Chantal do when Drew comes home and is like, Chantal is like, hey, did you get the muffins? And he's like, I didn't, but I have coffee. And these two women just pick up their coffee. They look at him, they look at each other, and they take a sip of it because this is giving the most man thing that a man can do. I'm sorry, it just is. It's giving this concept of like men who ask you for a list to go to the grocery store and then call you because they don't know what aisle something is in. I kind of got the ick from Drew, even though he's super hot. And I really feel bad that he's clearly going to get dumped over the course of this series. But this look between Percy and Chantal that they give to each other as they drink their coffee and then they give to him, the silent expression that women give to each other, and then like the sarcasm dripping from their looks as they're just like, who fucking needs coffee? We already have that. You were supposed to get muffins, you dumbass man. I loved this entire scene. I thought it was really funny. Speak Your Truth trophy. Best quote or line. There's two that I have. So one is this conversation between Chantal and Percy where Chantal says, we should social media stalk them. Percy says, I've tried every few years or so. They're all private. And Chantal goes, well, that's just rude of them. Then we have this quote from Percy where she says, my mom said she's going to kill that evil bitch, or at least that's what she said to my dad when she didn't realize I was listening. And this is Percy recalling this conversation between her parents after Sam has just said, like, hey, parents are not subtle, which I thought was really funny. And this concept of like Percy's mom being so angry at whatever Delilah did that she would say this was really, really funny to me. And I loved this line. And then, of course, we have the honorary heartthrob because I'm just a girl, okay? And I want to talk about the most wound-worthy moments. And it goes to Sam, who says, you came home. What could be a better moment than that? Honestly, maybe Charlie pulling Percy out of the lake when she's drowning. I will say that that is wonderful, great chef's kiss. We love it, except for the fact that I don't know how I feel about Charlie in the show. So I left him off my list, except for that I just gave him to you as an honorable mention because it's my podcast and I can do whatever I want. So thank you for listening to this episode of Femme and Furious. I'm about to go watch episodes 3 and 4. If you see me recording again in the shirt, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Because I'm doing a binge and then a deep debrief on the podcast so that I'm giving you my most live and current reactions as possible. So I will be back on Tuesday. I will be doing episodes 3 and 4. And until then, do not eat 10-year-old Hubba Bubba Gum.